Alan, hi, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks. Appreciate the possibility to do this interview. I appreciate that.
Fantastic. Well, we're very, very lucky to have you on. I think you have an incredible story in emergency management, and you are doing so many different things that I'm sure people will be very, very excited to hear about. So could you just give us a kind of a rundown of what it is that your current responsibilities are within emergency management, and maybe some of the activities that you do kind of outside your official job as well, please?
Right. So my official job, I'm the emergency manager for the City of Brampton, Ontario, Canada. And it's a city of about 600,000 roughly. And I have a team of 6 people that run with me. We run the emergency management program, including business continuity, including large crowd event safety, and a lot of other things. We're also doing some community safety support, various areas. So quite busy in that area, but emergency management, I've been in emergency management for about 25 years now, and that's the love, my love of what I do for work. So that's the day-to-day work, but I also do a lot of extracurricular activities. So I teach at York University in Toronto, and I teach courses particularly in crisis communication and some emergency management. I also teach occasionally for courses here and there for the Humber College, which is out of Guelph, but I teach all over the province, and I teach particularly emergency management for fire chiefs. So fire chiefs and deputy fire chiefs are often called to be the emergency manager for small communities, but they're not really equipped. They don't have the tools to be able to do the job. So I go to various parts of the province, through Humber College, and I provide these courses that gives them a good introduction, a strong basis to be able to do the job of emergency management in their small communities. So that's another area. I'm also working, this is more volunteer work, with ADRA Canada. ADRA is the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. And it's a faith-based organization, and I work on it's their humanitarian arm. So I do the relief part for Canada. I'm the National Emergencies Coordinator for Canada for ADRA, and we have teams of volunteers all across the country that respond to all sorts of disasters. So more recently, we were involved in the Ottawa and Eastern Ontario floods. We are still currently working in Alberta on the forest fires and wildfires that they've got there. So I coordinate the response with the volunteers there. And then, I am also a Red Cross volunteer. So on my off time, when I can find the time, I do once in a while, I respond to calls. I've been deployed to all parts of most of Canada, a couple of times in the States, but basically doing shelter management, things like that with the Red Cross, Canadian Red Cross. So that's about it.
That's just about it. Yeah, that kind of that makes it sound when you say that's just about it, that makes it sound like a small commitment that you have to emergency management.
Right. But,
that's right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned off time. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of off time in your calendar. So that makes me even more grateful that you've chosen to spend some time with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. I also sit on a number of committees, advisory committees with various associations, the International Association of Emergency Managers, for example, but also provincial governments. And so I'm requested, because I have 25 years experience, a lot of people call on me for all sorts of advice, and I'm happy to give it.
That's brilliant. Fantastic. I mean, that's exactly why I wanted to speak to you about the topic that we're going to be talking about today, about mentoring, because, I feel like there are so many people that are going through their emergency management career, and they turn to people like you, people who may serve formally as mentors, or they may serve more kind of informally as mentors. But that mentoring role is so important, and I feel like you would have a lot of value to share with us on that topic of mentoring. So what I would really like to know is how you would define a mentor, because we know about formal programs. We know that you can get a mentor sometimes when you join a job, but how do you see mentoring? Is it that narrow, or is it broader than that?
Yeah, for me, mentoring, I've had a few opportunities where I've actually had somebody who is sort of shadowing me, working in the office with me and seeing what I do to learn the on the job kind of. But that's not what I do most. I do some of that through internships with the university students, college students. But what I do most is informal kind of mentoring. Is that I mentor currently probably dozens of people because they know where I am. I've made myself available, and when they have a question, they have something, anything, you know. They just call on me, and that's fine. I give them advice as much as I can based on my experience and my expertise. And I have followed my students. So I teach. I've been teaching now for about I think it's about 16, going on 16 years now. So I've been teaching, well, through 16 years, I've seen a lot of students. You know, you get an average of maybe 40 to 50 students a year, that go through every court. Now, not all of them make it in emergency management, not all of them pursue a career in emergency management, but a lot of them do. And I can say that I probably have been able to follow about 10% of all the students that I've had over the years. And I know where they are, I know where they work, and I communicate with them. I travel all across the country, and wherever I go, I know there's some of my past students there. So I when I go somewhere, I try to connect with them, just to see how they're doing, how their job is coming along, and that's the more informal kind of mentoring. They know I'm there. They know, if they have ever, an issue, and I get probably between 5 to 10 emails a week from people that want advice in one way or another. So I'm currently monitoring mentoring all of these people informally in that method. And it's working because it doesn't require a lot of my time. It does take a little bit, but I take the time to, I analyze every question very carefully, and I make sure I provide an answer. Sometimes I don't have an answer. That's the other thing, is that I don't always have an answer for everything, but I know a lot of people. I've been able to create a very strong network. I probably have close to 2,000 LinkedIn, network people. So if I don't have the answer, I may know who does. And that's the next thing in mentoring, is not necessarily having all the answers, but knowing where to go to get the answers. And I can then transfer that person, that question, to whoever has that answer. I do a lot of introductions, and connecting people together so that they can answer those questions. So that's also part of mentoring. To me, it's not having to sit down with somebody every day and going through. I try once in a while particularly if they're in the area, to go for a coffee and a chat to see how they're doing. Just or if I'm traveling, like I say, somewhere else, and I know somebody's there and I haven't seen them in a while, I'll call to say, hey, I'll be in town, this time. Is there a chance we can grab a coffee together? And that's all really it is. But it's caring. It's wanting these people to succeed. That's really the main thing. There's not a need for a lot of formal. I've had some formal, and I know that there's we have the Ontario Association of Emergency Manager has a mentoring program where people register, they get followed. There's an evaluation afterwards and all, and it's for a short period. It's probably 3 months. I forget exactly, and I've done that. I've joined, and I followed a few people on that. But most of the mentoring I do is more of that informal kind of mentoring.
Brilliant. I think one thing that is really valuable that you've just done is you've shown us the broad range of mentoring opportunities that are actually out there. I think many people, when they think of having a mentor, it sounds like a formal relationship. It sounds like something that you maybe secure through university or college or through your workplace, and it does sound like that kind of regimented. You mentioned an evaluation process at the end. It sounds like that kind of more formal process. And I think while there are some really strong benefits to being involved in that, there are also, this huge kind of range of opportunities for people to find more informal mentors, and whether that is emailing once every now and again, or having a coffee when you're in town. I think that opening up that definition of mentor, so you're not just looking at it as somebody that you are formally attached to, but you're instead just kind of identifying someone that has the knowledge and the skills that you are interested in gaining, and has that insight that you can only get from having 25 years plus in emergency management. So I think that's really valuable, just kind of opening up that idea. This is not a restricted activity. This is something that we've all got access to. We've just got to go looking for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm a people person, so I like to be with people. I like to mingle with them, and I like to know about them. And I care for people. So those students I get, like I say, not everyone, but there are some that I sort of come to the top. And if they're truly interested and they want to work with me, I'll work with them. Yeah, and I'll make sure that they succeed. I'll do as much. But to me, it's not. I even know, when some of those students are getting married, or when they had their first child, or so I followed that. It's more than just work. It's more than just career. It's how are you doing, and how are and you need any help, and it could be help outside of just work. It could be sometimes they're going through some difficult times, and then job search. A lot of the advice that I give, because I'm requested, is about job search. How do I make it in this field? And emergency management, it's a fairly restricted field. There's not tons and tons of jobs. There are jobs opening regularly, but not, it's not like nursing or some of those other careers. So you have to work for it. You have to, and I provide some advice. How do you actually get through? And some of the students are struggling. Some are doing better. And I work mostly with students, with younger people, but occasionally I'll get a request from somebody that's more mature, or somebody that's going through a second career. A fire chief that decided, well, I'm retiring now, but I want to keep doing it, and emergency management sounds like my next choice. And so, okay, how do you transition into this new career? How do you do that? And so I have a variety, but the majority of the people that I mentor are students. And the fun thing is that they're all across the country. They started maybe here in Toronto, in the Toronto area, but I have some in Vancouver. I have somebody in Cape Breton, which is at the other end in Nova Scotia, and then I have a lot all over the place, all across the country, and that's great. It's a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see the big draw to being a mentor, and we can talk about what it means to be a mentor to someone a little bit later on. But for now, let's just kind of put ourselves in a position of someone that is thinking about trying to approach a mentor, but they're not kind of quite sure about whether it's kind of worth it in the end to do it. So we've talked about some of the benefits of finding and having a mentor already, just from what you've said. So you've mentioned the fact that mentees can get access to advice. There's a networking element to it, and there's also that kind of support outside of this strictly formal kind of workplace. Right. So do you see any other kind of benefits to mentoring? What's the reason that somebody should go and find a mentor?
Well, definitely there's best practice, and like I say, with 25 years under my belt, I've seen what works and what doesn't work. And now I want to be careful when I say that, because there's people that will say, well, yeah, you're traditional, you're going to keep, we've always done it this way, so we should do it. And I'm not. I'm very progressive. I'm open to new ideas. I'm always looking for new ways to do things. But there are certain things that we have tried and we know don't work. So I don't want people to go in that direction and make the same mistakes that we've already made. Don't repeat our mistakes. Yes, try some new things possibly, and I can give you some ideas and get some avenues where to go. But don't repeat those errors. And so that's one of the things also is knowing the best practice. What does work in this field and what is, and mind you, there's a lot of research being done. It's still a fairly new field. We haven't really explored all of the possibilities, so there's still room for growth. But I've been connected with a lot of people. I'm also, being at the university, gives me the advantage that I'm connected with a lot of the academics and the people that are doing research. So I read a lot. You know, that's one of the things I read as much as I can. Not necessarily huge books. I'm not going to read the 200-page book, you know, but I do read a lot of articles, a lot of summaries of books, and then if I see that there's something that really catches my attention, then I'll go and read the book, or at least some of the chapters in a book. But I read a lot in order to stay current, and that's one of the things I tell my mentees. You know, you want to stay on top of things. It's very nice you get this degree, this nice little paper that says you've made it, but this is only the start. If you really want to make it in this business, the business is changing daily. And, you know, we talk about climate change, things that, well, definitely climate change means emergency management change. We are constantly updating, upgrading, because we don't know how to resolve half of these situations that we're dealing with. You know, in Canada in particular, there's been a lot of work recently, a lot of emphasis in doing research with First Nations. First Nations are, I want to say this, you know, politically correct, but they're coming out of the cocoon in a way. They've been, and it's not their fault necessarily, but they've been, you know, hiding away. We weren't really aware of their needs. We weren't really helping, or we always thought, well, the federal government is going to take care of them, and so we don't need to worry about. And over the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, they've really started to come out and say, hey, we want to do things for ourselves. You know, just gives us the tools, help us, train us, and then we'll take care of it. We'll take care of our own people, which makes total sense to me, because I'm you know, I'm a male Caucasian, and I know absolutely, I have no background with First Nations in my blood. I don't know anything about their culture, about their values, you know, so who am I to go and tell them how to do things, you know, or to tell them, you follow my rule. So I think we need a lot of research there, and that's where, you know, the students can get a mix, you know, those that are really interested, work with the First Nations, learn their you know, their values, their culture, which is a little bit that I know is just fabulous. It's just amazing. But find out, and then see how can we bring in emergency management gently into this, so that they can you know, become more autonomous and take care of disasters and that. So that's, and I now have a few of my mentees that are actually looking into this, and I think that there's a lot of work in the future for that. So it's encouraging them into going into areas where we know there is a need. You know, there's a niche there that somebody has to look into. Like I say, we haven't scratched the surface on that area. And Canada is such a wide, you know, half of our country is under snow 10 months of the year, and you know, basically, you know, the people who live in those areas are totally removed from the major urban centers, and we don't know how they work, how they live. So who are we to tell them how to do things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's two kind of really important benefits that I think I can draw out of that. One of them is the fact that having a mentor gives you access to best practice that can only be kind of gathered over the years. Now, whether that is 5 years and you're mentoring someone, or whether it's 30 years and you're mentoring someone, there is so much value in experience, and that's something that we can't get in the classroom. And you know, I've mentioned on other videos in the past that, you know, some of the best on podcasts, sorry, is some of the best sort of lessons that I've learned in my field have come from having conversations with people outside of any formal conference or education setting. And so one of the reasons that, you know, I'm building this crisis academy is so that we can connect people in new ways.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because my students, you know, I'm going to brag here, but my students in crisis communication, they all tell me that this is the best course that they've ever. Why? Because I'm a practitioner. I'm not an academic. I do have an academic, you know, inkling, and I do know how academics work, but that's not my priority. My priority is practitioner, and I want these people to understand what the field is. So when I go in my class, I don't just give them the theory. I also give them, you know, practical examples. I give them tell them stories of either myself directly or friends of mine that I know that participated in various events, and these are real life stories, and that's what makes the beauty of this course. And the students really appreciate that because it goes beyond just what they learn in the books. If it was just learning in the books, well, just take the book and read it, and that's it. But it's most beyond. What I offer in my classroom is really the lived-in experience. What have we done? What is the reality out there? And what are some of the lessons that we learned through doing things? And that's where, so the experience is invaluable. And I try to bring some of that, at least through to my course, rather than just the academic components.
Absolutely, absolutely. The practice element is, I mean, it's almost like the academic side and the practice side, they have to exist, they have to coexist, because one can't really function well without the other. And that actually brings me nicely to the second kind of big benefit that I was hearing you speak about, and that's just the ability to be updated a lot quicker than you can through the traditional academy, because we all know that through journal publications and books, it takes 2, 3, 5 years sometimes to get that research that was done in 2010, it's out in 2015. And that really is not in our field, where lives are depending on us making the best decisions. That's too long. And so for people like you who are working in the academy to then, bring it into the kind of practice element and vice versa, I think that's a really unique combination of experience that you can offer to people.
Yeah, I know I'm privileged to be able to be there, because I mingle with the academics and I mingle with the practitioners, and I get a little bit of both. So I know what's being researched. I see those reports when they come out, and I talk to people who have actually done the research, and I get a lot of that. I attend a lot of conferences and seminars, workshops, just to stay in touch with these people and to find out what they're working on, and attending their sessions, so that after that I can transmit some of that. I can pass this on to other users to and translate that. In a way, I'm a translator. I take what the academics do and I translate it into a practitioner, because as much as I like academics, they often are too strict on the academic side and not enough understanding of how can we actually apply that. Research is great, but if you can't apply it, then it's useless. So I become a translator in that I take that research and those results of research, and I say, okay, now how can we make that useful? And then I transmit that and pass it on to students. That's why I write blogs as well, with the various associations, and on those I try to do some of that. Here's what we're learning, and here's how we can apply it.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it, that translation kind of aspect. You've made me think, actually, I think of myself in a similar way in terms of, so my background is in law and I'm a lawyer, but the existing solely within that legal space is great for some things, if you're just strictly being academic about it. But
right.
The law is a very powerful tool, and if you can use it to do something practical, then that's great. So I fully understand that. So one thing I want to come back to, you mentioned that you tell your students stories in the classroom. So I'm wondering, do you have any kind of stories about, and you don't have to mention names or anything or personal details, but do you have any kind of stories about the impact that mentorship can have on, say, a young professional or a new professional to emergency management?
Yeah, I got quite a few stories of, like I say, I've been following. I'd say I go back to one of my first opportunities for mentoring, a young man from Ontario who was actually doing his doctorate in emergency management from Coventry University in the UK. And because at the time we had no programs no education programs in Ontario, but he wanted to have a local mentor. So he needed to have somebody to follow him while he was doing his PhD, that was doing his thesis research. So he had to have I forget what you call it, but somebody to follow him. So I did. He contacted me through the association. He knew about this, and so he said, "I'm looking for somebody." And I was president of the association at the time, so I said, "Okay, I'll look into it and I'll take you on." And I did. And it was interesting because he was, pretty green and starting off. And at the time, he had just started to have a relationship with a girlfriend, and you know, it was very young. It was 20 some, and but I started following him, and through the years, I saw him grow, and we constantly went together to conferences and seminars. He was regularly, you know, counting on me. We did work together. Occasionally, we went on contracts here and there. We did some consulting at the time, and he helped me. He came with me to various contracts. Did some work. So some of that, and then he got married, and he now has 2 children. And but over the years, I've seen him move up the ranks. He's changed companies. He went, and now he's a director of emergency manager in a large region, in, you know, urban region. And so, to me, that it just makes me so proud to see somebody go to that level, you know, and then and to follow him, like I say, both in his professional world, seeing him go up the ranks, gradually move up, you know, to an assistant, a specialist, then a manager, and eventually to a director. You know, it was just amazing to see that. And then, but at the same time, to see his life, you know, change, getting from a girlfriend to getting married to having children. His children are now in I'd say they're getting close to high school. You know, so that's the value. It's you know, and we create a friendship. It's more than just mentorship. There's a friendship. You know, we're friends now. But he still sometimes sends me an email, says, "What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" You know, and yeah, sure. So I give him my insight, what I think, and you know, so that's an example of a great story that, you know. But he was one of the first. But since then, there's been so many, you know, through the years. There's this one young lady who is actually now in Vancouver, and she started, wasn't really sure where she wanted to go, and then got you know, applied for this position as just a specialist in Vancouver. And you know, over the years, have been mentoring, has been counting on me, and I've been giving her advice. And now she's coming back, and she's a guest speaker on conferences because she's done such fabulous work out west, that, you know, people are looking to her to get insight, because she's just grown so much now, you know. So I go and listen to her talks, you know. It's funny, but so there's, you know, seeing that those people grow and expand is just amazing. It's so gratifying to see that. But also, you know, as I said, our field is new. It's fairly new. I mean, yes, I've been at it for 25 years, but it's changed so much in the 25 years. And really, the bulk of the work is new. And we need to have people that are going to grow. And so as I'm helping these students, I'm also helping grow the field, if you want. The industry, the profession of emergency manager is growing because these people are getting stronger. They're getting you know, more knowledgeable. They're gaining from the experience. So I'm not just giving to individual. I think I'm giving back to the whole profession by doing that. I want the next generation of emergency managers to be confident, to be strong, and then to know that what they're doing is important, and to feel confident in face of disasters and large-scale emergencies, so that they can respond. We often have, when I do exercises, I often invite some of my mentees to come in and, you know, hey, we're having an exercise, want to come in and observe, you know, and they come in and they learn just from the exercise itself. I do training. I'm not picky on who's going to attend training. If I got room in the classroom and you want to come in and sit in on my training session, yeah, come on in. You know, you're welcome to do so. And that's the thing, is that you may have that diploma, that degree, whatever, that paper that says you've made it in this field, but you can't stop learning. You got to keep learning. So any opportunities that you get for training. So when a student or somebody calls me and says, I'd like to learn more about this and that, well, I say, oh, well, there's a course coming up here and there. And that's another thing that you can do, is you can signal that because I'm connected with so many different associations and groups, I get, you know, all these invitations to conferences, seminars, workshop. I can't attend all of them, but I attend a few. But when I know of something and somebody called me and says, would you know where I could look into this? You know, then I send them. I send them to IAM, or send them to even ACES. You know, the ACES is more security side, but they do have a strong section that deals with emergency management as well. So, you know, if IAM doesn't have it, or other associations don't have it, well, look into ACES. Maybe ACES has something. So being connected with all these agencies is also something I can refer them to, help them grow their own network through sharing some of the networks that I'm connected with. Yeah.
One thing that is really striking me at the minute is how invested you sound in each one of the mentees that you are working with, and whether that's a student you have for just one course, or it's someone like the, you know, one of the first mentees that you mentioned, that you see them develop, and you see them with their girlfriend and then their wife and then their kids, and you know, so that strikes me as a really important quality to have if you are someone that wants to go into mentoring.
Yeah,
that sounds like a really important quality. So could you speak to that a little bit? Like, what qualities does one need to have to serve effectively as a mentor?
Well, definitely you need to be a caring person. You need to care for this. You know, it's not just giving advice. I can give advice. I can write things, and I can give advice to anybody. That's not a problem. That's an issue. But when I work with a person that, you know, and like I say, I don't take mentees. I don't take everybody as mentee. You know, I want to make sure that they want to be there. So if they want to do something, they're going to work for it. I'll work with them. But then it's because I care. I want them to succeed. And that, I think that's the key, is that if you're going to be a mentor, is because you're aiming to have that person that you're going to follow succeed in their profession, you know, but succeed overall. And success isn't measured by just how much work you do and how, you know, how often you attend events or whatever. It's also in your regular life. You know, are you having that, you know, that typical life work balance that we're talking about often? You know, so how are things at home? You know, or are you putting a little too much emphasis on work, and maybe you need to take time? You know, I had three children. They're all grown up now. They're on their own, and but I, even though I've been very busy, I always made sure that I had time for my family. You know, and my wife, you know, is retired now. She's at home, but I make sure that I don't neglect while I'm doing all these things. I actually often bring her with me on trips, and when we go somewhere, I go to a conference, I bring her with me, you know, and we do things so that she's around and I'm with her. You know, that the life balance is important. So when I work with a mentee, I'll give them a lot of advice, profession-wise, work-wise, you know, but I also try to get to know them a little bit and see, you know, how is your life in general? You know, I've been able, you know, with everything we hear about PTSD today, it's so important. And yeah, we're not police officers, we're not firefighters, so maybe we don't see the traumatic kinds of things that you know, these people, you know, and I feel for them. What people go through, and the first responders go through, can be horrific, and PTSD is a real problem, and we need to put more resources to that, definitely. But we're not immune from it. You know, we see things, or we hear things. I'm in my emergency operations center, and all I get reports. You know, I get reports of casualties, I get reports of damage, I get, you know, sometimes I get a TV feed, I get a video here and there. So we do see that, but we hear those stories repeated over and over and over again, you know. So let me just turn this off, sorry.
Not a problem, don't worry.
All right, but so we do hear them, and after a while it can get to you, or if you've been working too far. So, for example, in Ottawa, this is the third year in a row where they have major emergency. They had floods in 2017 that were pretty devastating, and they were really not ready for it. They had huge issues, but they coped. And then in 2018, they had a tornado. go through, and they had to cope with that. And tornado, caused a lot of devastation and damage. And this year again, they get floods. This time they were better prepared because they learned from 2017, which is good. But they've been at this for months now. And, for at least 2 months, they've been at handling this flood response. And that's right after having finished working with the tornado on the tornado. Barely finished recovery from the tornado. So these people are burnt out. They've struggled, and they are. So I'm worried for them. I'm worried that they're going to go through some PTSD. And I know a few people. Some of my colleagues are there, and so once in a while, if I do go to Ottawa, and I do once in a while, I have family in Ottawa actually. So when I go there, I'll see if I can go and grab a coffee with one of them and chat and see how they're doing. But it's really more than just the work. It's the people aspect. These are people that are going through. Emergency management is not necessarily an easy field. If you don't have an emergency, for years and years, then good for you. You just do training and exercise and you keep doing it. That's great. But once you get hit, and sometimes you get hit one after the other, that's when it can get rough. So I follow them, not just in the off times, but I also follow them if they need help. They know that I can be there for them to help in professionally, but also sometimes just reassuring words, and or stopping them, tapping them on the shoulder and saying, are you taking enough time for yourself? Yeah, you're going through this emergency, you're working there, but and you know what, I'm the worst for this because I have to have others tap me on the shoulder to get me out of the EOC when it's my turn, But so I know that I don't want to give up my place when I'm into it. I just sit there. When we had in 2013, we had the major ice storm in the area here, and we were at it for and I had to have people tell me, you need to go home now. You need to just, we'll be okay. We'll take over from there, and so I'm the worst culprit for that. But I try to think of others, and I would try to remind them that, hey, you need to take time for yourself. So it's more than just professional work. You need to care. You need to want these people to succeed, and you need them to succeed not just in workplace, but in life in general.
Yeah, I would agree with you there on the importance of having that broader kind of oversight of what's going on as well, because it's not just necessarily like, is this a good move for me in my career?
Right.
You can't really answer that question actually unless you know a bit about their family life, or a little bit about their personal life or whatever else. So I think having that, I want to say kind of top down in a way, you've got to be able to kind of see the bigger picture when you are serving as a mentor. If you really want to be effective with somebody, you've got to be able to see the bigger picture, and you've got to be able to take into account all of these sort of conflicting sort of inputs into that person's life, so that you can make that kind of calculated expert sort of decision or opinion to actually give them. So I think that's really valuable. Thank you.
One of the things that a lot of students come to ask me is that, should I do a master's degree? Should I go on and study? And I say, well, here's my take on it, is that if you have you don't have a mortgage, you don't have a family, you don't have a wife, you don't have kids, now's the time to do it, because I've seen people come back and do it later, but it's extremely difficult. So if you have no obligations that are tying you down right now, I say yes, do it, because even though it's not a requirement to have a master's degree in order to be in emergency management, it's going to become more and more important over the years. And if you want to move up the ranks, if you want to get the better positions eventually, then you're going to need it, because you're in competition with all these people that have it. And if you don't, well, then you're going to miss out. So if you have the opportunity and you don't have any obligations right now, go for it. Same thing if there's an opportunity that opens up outside of the area where you studied. A lot of students, they want to get a job right here in Toronto, in the Toronto area, because that's where they are, that's where they live right now, that's where mom and dad are, and that's where they're studying. But they say, if at this point, if you don't have an obligation, if you're not married, you don't have kids, then look outside of Toronto now, and if you go and you get settled in somewhere else in another province, and I've had a lot of students that have taken that advice, moved out of the province to go into other areas. So, and they're finding that they're getting better chances of moving up the ranks there because, everybody who studies in Toronto wants to stay in Toronto, and the market becomes saturated. So when they're going outside of there, they're having better opportunities. So that's the kind of advice as well. It's not just knowing what to do in emergency management. It's not just formally emergency management advice. It's what do you do for your career? Where do you go? Where are the good places? Where are what are the things to think about, and when should you be doing it? In 10 years from now, that same student will have a lot of obligation, be married, have kids, have a mortgage. You can't just pack up and move. It becomes very difficult. So if you haven't selected your place, ahead of time, if you haven't done that move ahead of time, you're not going to be able to do it, or it's going to be extremely difficult to do it later. So again, that's the idea. It's more than just practice advice on emergency management. It's caring for the person and wanting them to succeed in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a lot about about what the sort of investment is, I guess, in the whole process of being a mentor. It's not just that you are invested in somebody, but it's that you have that experience, you are willing to take the time, the fact that you get 5 to 10 emails every week, that's a lot. The fact that you are willing to kind of open up your professional networks, because in a way it's like you have to trust that person that you are referring will actually then reflect well on you professionally, so there's a lot that mentors take on. And in some cases they may actually get paid for that through a work sort of stipend to do that through a workplace. But can you talk a little bit more about some of the kind of rewards that you get as a mentor that aren't financially linked, just the maybe personal rewards or rewards or professional?
Yeah, I've never done mentoring for payment. I do it because I care for the people. I want them to really. So the reward is a gratification. When I see that one of my mentors becomes the director of emergency management for Toronto Hydro, for example, and is well respected. And it's funny because I remember that this guy, he at one point, he was trying to convince his CEO and senior management about the need for more business continuity, and he says, I'm struggling. They're not listening to me. I'm the preacher that's preaching into his own, inside, and the prophet in his own country, and nobody listens to me. He said, could you come and you talk to them? And I said, sure. So I went to one of the senior management, meetings that he invited me to, and I gave them a little speech, a little presentation on what's the value of being, doing emergency management and business continuity in their industry, and gave them examples of places where it hadn't worked, where they hadn't done anything, and so helping him succeed beyond just giving him advice, also going out there and speaking on his behalf to people, so that's another example. But and I forgot our question now. But not sure if that's the area with the gratification of seeing them succeed. There's really this young lady in Vancouver that I followed more or less on and off, is she became the second Chief Resilience Officer for Canada. I don't know if you're familiar with the Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities program. Mm-hmm. And so in Canada, we have 3 cities that were successful: Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. Montreal got it 1 year before the other 2, and they hired a Chief Resilience Officer, so they were first off the mark. But then Vancouver was second, and Toronto was third. And Vancouver hired this young lady who was already working in the emergency management office for Vancouver, but they hired her, they moved her up as Chief Resilience Officer. And she's one of my students. She was, one of my mentees. So to see that, hey, this is the second person ever to do this job in Canada, and she's doing it. She's a young person that's really come through the rank, but through, studies and education and gain from the mentorship. Just that in itself is reward enough. seeing them succeed when you're giving them a little bit of help here and there is just fabulous. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right there. I think people that are, kind of obsessed with money and they go into work for money, they don't come into fields like humanitarian work or emergency management or whatever else. There's always something else to it. And whether it's a desire just to generally to help people, or whether it's, a concern about the environment and what we're doing to it and how we can kind of combat some of that in terms of resiliency, there's always some other reason that people go into it. And I think that's probably why we have such strong and such successful mentors in this business, because there are people that fundamentally care about something bigger than a paycheck.
Yeah.
That's really great. Okay, last question.
I tell my students, if you want to be a millionaire, don't be an emergency manager. You're in the wrong field, because we don't make a lot of money. I'm comfortable. I make a good salary. Mm-hmm. I pay for my bills and I take care of my family, but I don't expect to, I don't have a mansion. I only got one car, and it's not a, BMW or whatever. But I'm happy with that, because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to make tons of money. I got enough to care for myself and travel a bit and, take a bit of vacation once in a while. But then the rewards are not financial. They're totally different. And you're right. If I wouldn't be in a humanitarian field if I was looking for money.
Definitely. And I say the same thing all the time. People always, well, not always, but often will joke with me and say, "Oh, you're a lawyer, you're fine, whatever." And I'm like, not quite the same levels of pay that you get in corporate Manhattan. It's a very different world. But okay, so last question that I want to ask you. I think we collectively have done a very good job of selling the value of mentoring to people. So how would you advise someone to get into mentoring, either as a mentor or as a mentee?
Well, you can either go through various associations or colleges, university, in a formal way. They're always looking for people to take on, and there's a form. You register, you sign some forms, you sign some agreements, and so that's the formal way to do it. And you can do that. There are a lot. So check out your own association locally, or a college, university that offers an emergency management program. And they probably will have something for you. That's the formal way. The informal way is just to attend events and mingle with people and chat with them and get to know them. And particularly when you're coming there, if you have that experience and you're really ready to offer some of that to anybody, well, then go in and start to look for the young people, the people that are looking for that kind, who are just starting out and seem to be brand new in the field. They seem to be very green, and just get to know them, chat with them, and give them your business card. Tell them where you work. Give them a few little stories just to get them interested, and tell them, once you leave, you can contact me anytime. You've got a question, you got something, contact me. Give me a call. And it's one of the things that is like I said, I don't mentor everybody. I have to see that they're really interested. But usually the people that are interested, that's the people you'll find at the workshops, at the seminars. They'll pay the money to attend the seminar and workshop because they want to get something out of it. They're not just, particularly if they're not if it's not their company that pays, to go to that workshop. If they're going on their own, then they're interested. And that's the people that will listen to you, and they'll take your advice, and they'll go and do something with it. So go to those network events, go to those workshops, seminars, and during the breaks, mingle with them. Get to know them, and give your business cards and say, hey, give me a call if you got a question. I'll be happy to answer. That's the informal mentoring. Now, of course, I have the advantage that because I teach, I get these students in class. I connect with them. We could build a relationship throughout a whole semester, and then they contact me afterwards and say, can I stay in touch with you? And sure, if you're interested, and I see that you're serious about this, then yes. So there's different ways of doing it. Certainly, if you are teaching already, I think teachers are the best, possible, that have the easiest to become mentors. But you don't have to be a teacher. Like I say, so either the formal way through an institution, organization, or the informal by attending and giving business cards.
Yeah, I think that making that kind of first move in a way is kind of important for a lot of people, because, you know, if I'm sat here and I'm like, okay, I would really like to be a mentor, you know, I can't just expect people to be kind of lining up to speak to me. You know, it's a two-way street, it's not a one-way street. And I think, you know, we all find people that we really enjoy talking to at conferences, and people that you kind of click with better than other people. And so in a way it's going to be organic, but there has to be that first step made somewhere. And just, you know, being conscious as well, as someone who wants to mentor, perhaps you're a bit more senior in your field and you're kind of thinking, you know, you've got to be aware of the fact that people who are maybe younger or junior to you in terms of their career, they may be kind of intimidated in a certain way to approach you and to ask to do that. So I think just being open and being saying, you know, if you're interested, here's my card, you know, I'd love to hear from you, that kind of thing can really make a big difference to people, and can really open up that relationship in a kind of friendly and accessible way.
And another thing is I get invited as a speaker, guest speaker to conferences, you know, all the time, and I'm happy to do it. When I prepare for a presentation, I always think of who's my audience and who's going to be there and what are they looking for. So I don't prepare, you know, just so, oh, I got something I want to share and I give it. It's not for me, it's for them. So what are they going to be looking out of it? And then what I find is that when I do that, and people connect with what I think they were looking for, and they get it, then they come after my speech is done, when my presentation is done, they come up and they come and talk to me and says, oh, I really like that. I want to know more about it. Can you send me your presentation and all that? And that's usually a time to start connecting with them. You know, if they like what you said, they agree with what you're saying, they're interested, they want to know more, that right there, you're going to create some mentees just doing that. I've had a lot of people that have come up to me after conferences, seminars, speeches, and said, you know, I want to know more about this, you know, and can you send me? So I either send them some more information, I connect them with somebody else, I give them some reading material that they should consider. You know, that's also mentoring. And so that's another opportunities. If you're invited as a guest speaker, think of it as an opportunity to create some connections with mentees.
Fantastic. That's really, really fantastic advice. And let's wrap this up. Thank you very, very much again for spending the time with us. I think this is going to be really valuable for people at kind of both ends of the mentoring spectrum, those who are looking for mentors, you know, and who are looking to serve as it. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experiences.
I'm happy to do that. If people want to connect through LinkedIn, just search me, and yeah, I'm there, and I'll be happy to reply.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that all of your links to your LinkedIn are registered with this video. So thank you very much.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
All right.